Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a tasty show today and lots of really good information, I can promise you. During the first hour, we're going to be talking about how, we always talk about how newbies in the gym respond so quickly. So, they put on muscle. So it stands to reason that if they also consume or overfeed or consume what is considered higher amounts of protein, you would think that that would also propel them even faster into their muscle gains. But does it? We're going to find out during the first hour when we talk to Colleen Mckenna about a study that she just published at the University of Illinois. I don't think, other than Dr. Jose Antonio over at ISSN, I don't think there's a single other place other than the University of Illinois that has done more research for us to understand the benefits of protein, the effects of protein, the quality of protein, soy versus whey versus, they do such great research up there. And it's really important to those of us who use protein to build muscle. And so we're going to get to the bottom of that one in just a little bit. And then later in the show, at the top of the hour, we're going to be joined by Dr. Gil Bland. So many of us follow nutritional guidelines, supplemental guidelines, and we really don't know if they're working for us. They could be working against us. We could find out that something we're doing is not beneficial, like when I was taking 500 milligrams of testosterone a week. But you don't know that unless you test. And people are reluctant to test. I don't understand it. The money you spend on testing, you save when you stop using things that you don't need to use. So we're going to delve into this a little bit deeper and why people feel that they can just keep on shooting in the dark, as I like to call it. Before we do that, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods. They have the Tasty Pastry, which started out as a Pop-Tart and is now so much more. I promise you, if you buy them, you'll eat them because they're delicious. You will swear you're cheating. You'll swear there's sugar in it. You'll swear there's grain in it. They taste like real pastries filled with delicious iced fillings and iced on top, less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high quality protein. You'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. They'll help keep you in your dietary lane. And right now you can save 10% off when you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10. And don't forget, during the commercial break, you will hear a secret word. Simply email that secret word. And you can put in the subject line, you can put secret word. Simply email that secret word to onair@superhumanradio.net. Include your mailing address, and we promise you will get a box of tasty pasties for free. because they're that good. We know that if we give you some, you're most likely going to buy more. It's the truth. So be prepared. And without further delay, let's see what I have here. My guest is Colleen Mckenna. How you doing, Colleen?
Hi, Carl. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. So this study, you looked at middle-aged newbies, as we like to call them, guys who decide, I got to get into the gym. I got to build some muscle. I'm getting older. It's the right thing to do. And you looked at them from the standpoint of dietary protein intake. We know that bodybuilders and power lifters, I eat a gram of protein a day per pound of body weight. And I've been doing that for a very, very long time now. But most dietitians would say that is a lot of protein, maybe even too much. But in this case, it probably is too much. Why this study? What work preceded that this study needed to be published?
Yeah, great question. So like you mentioned before, so this was in middle-aged adults. So I guess one of the reasons is, when we're looking at muscle health with aging, most of that research is already in the aged population, like older than 60, for example. But we know kind of on a global scale that prevention is always more efficient than treatment. So what are these recommendations that we give to older adults? How do they look like in middle-aged adults? Do we need to start these recommendations earlier on in life? What does that response look like? So that's kind of one aspect for why we decided to look at middle-aged adults. But another reason why we wanted to perform this study is our method of muscle protein synthesis. So that kind of traditional research is very a small observation window, but obviously we know, our whole lifetime is a lot bigger than those small observation windows.
Right.
So more traditional research could be kind of limiting in that aspect. In that same sense, that research kind of always looks at a single protein meal or meal after exercise.
Right. A postprandial acute response, and we sum up everything from that. Exactly.
Right. And all the research that kind of looks at protein intake for resistance training gains really can be better characterized as protein supplements. But we know that supplements versus what we do in our diet, which is meal by meal, day to day, very different. So we tried to look at that diet aspect. So what you're eating on a meal basis, on a daily basis, how that translates to how our muscle responds to a resistance training program.
So how many people in this study? How many subjects, and what was their age range?
Mm-hmm. So we had 20 participants. These were men and women. And their age range, we recruited between 40 to 64, so on average about 50 years old.
And were they all naive to weight training and resistance training, or did they train at some point in their lives and, hey, we're going to try it again? I haven't done it for years. What was that set up there?
Yeah, so we only recruited those that weren't currently in a resistance training program. So at least a year of no formal resistance training.
Excellent. Because we know that muscle memory is an interesting thing, that if you've trained at some point in your life, regaining at least 80% of that muscle can happen very quickly. And that's the only reason why I was curious about that. When we talk about protein synthesis and we talk about hypertrophy, obviously hypertrophy can also be a result of what do I want to say? Fluids being taken up by each individual muscle cell. So they plump up, and versus protein synthesis, which means that you're actually making new muscle fibers. Is this correct? Am I understanding it correctly?
Exactly. Yeah. So like you said, hypertrophy is the actual size of the muscle fiber. And then muscle protein synthesis is the amino acids being used to make proteins within the muscle within the body. So we have contractile proteins. So those are myofibrillar proteins. We have mitochondrial proteins. So that's when you're talking about, energy, oxidation, those mitochondria helps in that aspect. And then also collagen protein, so structural support within the muscle tissue.
So that leads me to the next question. Did you monitor, regulate, or dictate the types of proteins that these individuals could consume?
Yes, we did. So, total protein is definitely, what current recommendations emphasize. But research definitely shows us that not just protein amount, but protein quality contributes to muscle health. So when I say protein quality, I mean the amount of essential amino acids that a protein food source has.
High leucine proteins, which we know stimulates mTOR and produces a protein synthetic response to a meal. But now when you talk about collagen, you're talking about collagen protein, which is completely different, and not so much. The way I understand it is collagen contributes to hypertrophy by allowing the casing of the muscle to grow, so that the stuff inside can find new room and pull in more fluid and produce more muscle fibers. So collagen is important, but it doesn't necessarily stimulate mTOR, right?
Yeah, I mean, collagen, the food source of collagen, it doesn't contain all essential amino acids. So essential amino acids are those that you can synthesize within the body, whereas other animal sources of protein like beef, whey, those do contain all essential amino acids.
Yeah. And tough meat. People don't like to eat tough meat. I love cube steaks. These are steaks that have to be tenderized mechanically so that you can enjoy them. The reason they're tough is because they have more collagen in them. So eating collagen, like eating a tough steak, is actually better for you if you can tough it out, so to speak, because of the high leucine and also the additional quality of collagen protein in it. Okay, so what were the target groups of protein intake? What was considered normal or baseline? What was considered overfeeding?
So current recommendations, at least in the United States, are 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that was our kind of moderate protein goal. And then the higher protein goal was 1.6 grams of protein per day per kilo of body weight. So this is pretty consistent with that research that looks at the effect of protein supplementation on resistance training outcomes like strength and lean body mass.
Right,
so kind of doing that.
The higher group was almost 1 gram per pound or 2 grams per kilo. I mean, it was pretty close.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's the bodybuilding. We that 1 gram of protein per body weight, per pound of body weight, has been around forever. So you really were feeding them what is considered a protein intake that should result in greater muscle acquisition.
Correct.
Okay. Now, did you run blood work on these individuals? Did you try to isolate anything that when the results was done, you could look and say, oh, this is why this person responded differently than that one?
Yeah, so we do look at kind of the clinical metabolic profile in our participants. So this is this current study was only evaluation over 3 weeks, but it's a part of a larger study over 10 weeks. So we're in that larger study, we're kind of looking at the effect of the intervention on, chronic disease risk. People say that
kidneys,
animal protein, and
too
exactly.
hard for your kidneys, and several good studies have been done. One of them by Dr. Jose Antonio that have pretty much dispelled that. Unless you already have chronic kidney disease, protein intake really is inconsequential to kidney function. Would you agree with that statement? Is that what your literature you've reviewed has said?
Exactly. Yeah. So without pre-existing condition, more protein intake is not bad for you, especially animal-based protein intake, which is what our data shows as well.
Now, did any of the individuals in the higher protein group have difficulty hitting their daily protein intake targets?
Yes. That definitely, when we're talking about recommendations, feasibility is kind of at the end of the day, it's the most important thing. So it was hard. We continually counseled these participants. So both groups were counseled to be within their protein goals. And so, for the high protein group, you're kind of always counseling them, encouraging them to have higher protein portions in their meals, whereas the low protein group, you're always counseling them to reduce like their protein intake at like dinner, for example.
Are you familiar with the theory of protein leveraging?
Could you explain?
So
that term leveraging.
So let's say a potato, and I don't even know if this is accurate, but just for the sake of it, let's say a potato has 5 grams of protein per 100 grams of potato. Your body is looking for a requisite amount of protein every day. So if you have to eat 12,000 grams of potato to get that requisite amount of protein, this is what causes people to overeat foods that have small amounts of protein. So protein leveraging says basically, and I'm paraphrasing, this is, oversimplification, but I eat my protein first. Because if I can't eat the potato and I can't eat the green beans or I can't finish those, I don't care because I got my protein. Did you instruct these people eat your protein first?
Yeah, exactly. So, kind of along the same lines. So we kind of more characterize it as, I guess, efficiency. So animal-based proteins are a really efficient source of protein because, like you said, in contrast to a potato, there's very high amounts of protein for very low amount of volume of food, for example. So another reason why it is important to consume animal-based protein sources is because you're getting more protein and less food, which allows you to consume those other food groups for their own benefit, like fruits and vegetables for the fiber and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And this is the mistake that most people make, right? They start a dietary regimen where they're going to start increasing their protein, but they eat the broccoli and they eat the potato. And then when it comes time to eat the protein, they're like, oh, I'm full. I can't finish it. So you got to eat your protein first. If you're serious about seeing the benefits of protein, you have to eat it first. Let's talk about the correlations between blood work and also gender. So did you see things in the blood work that would make us understand better why this group didn't respond well to the higher protein intake?
I wouldn't say it's less. It's not a case of the higher group not responding, but just that once you break it down into that more, I guess, comprehensive analysis where we're providing protein at those key anabolic windows. So, those kind of protein supplementation studies, it's always a protein source versus carbohydrate control. So that control group is explicitly withholding protein from that group, whereas we provided protein regardless of the group, just the actual serving size was different. So I wouldn't say it as the high group didn't respond and that, there isn't anything indicative within their blood that would say that they would be non-responders, but just, the approach of the strategy of providing protein, but really just looking at the differences in protein amount allows us to show that more is not better, that a moderate amount is just enough. And you're not going to see, further advantages just by loading the system with more protein.
How long were these groups required to eat this way for the research?
Yeah, so this current study, we just looked at the participants for 3 weeks, but they were part of a larger study, which was a 10-week training total.
Okay, so did you see any metabolic risk changes, either better or worse? And did you see any metabolic changes at all, like better blood sugar management with the higher protein group, anything like that?
So yeah, that 10-week, those 10-week outcomes, we did not see any difference in blood work. And yeah, exactly like you said. So we looked at markers of renal health. We looked at markers of, diabetes risk, cardiovascular disease risk, and those did not change, which, epidemiological research kind of suggests that there's a risk of animal-based protein on these type of chronic disease. But at least in our research, a diet with animal-based protein in addition to resistance exercise, so a diet or a lifestyle that has a healthy nutrient-dense diet with an active lifestyle is not going to increase your risk of
Well, and the other thing to consider is the epidemiological studies that say that red meat is bad for you. They consider 1.5 pounds of bologna red meat. They consider food, highly processed meats that we now know, not just the garbage that they put in them, but the high heat cooking, which increases advanced glycation end product and nitrosamine accumulation in these meats. They like calling a piece of bologna red meat and putting it into the same category as, say, a New York strip, steak. It is kind of like calling the plastic bag you get from the grocery store equivalent to a Louis Vuitton handbag. It's like, yeah, they both hold stuff, but they're very, very different. So part of the problem we have today when the discussion of red meat or animal protein comes up is people ignore that you can't lump bologna and a New York strip into the same equation and expect to see the same outcomes metabolomically. It's just crazy to me that we still are stuck in that, oh, red meat is bad for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these observational studies, they allow us to form, educated hypotheses that whenever we're going into interventional research, where that just more targeted with our question. But yeah, like you said, once we look at it more thoughtfully, looking at processing, looking at food source, looking at other lifestyle factors like exercise or smoking, for example. Like you said, interventionally, those that risk isn't there.
So Dr. Malin Watvi came on my show probably 9 years ago. He wrote a fantastic book. You'd love it. It's called Of Doves, Diplomats, and Diabetes. And he looked at evolutionary gifts that we still carry today. That when we early in our beginnings, we ran risks to feed ourselves. To go out of a cave and find food without becoming food was a real challenge. Those biological processes are still with us today. What came out of his book that was most important was post-workout, especially if you train hard, intensely, where there is a some risk. I don't mean like you gotta, be close to death, but the body acquires this risk factor that, I'm lifting heavy weights, actually changes the protein synthetic response of the proteins that you eat and shifts you away from insulin resistance, makes you more insulin sensitive, but more importantly, it upregulates the anabolic response to food. And so when we look at people who are eating 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and we put them in two different groups, one works out and then has that meal, and one sits in the sofa and has that meal, completely different things occur in their body. It's so fascinating to me because this even plays out in people with type 2 diabetes. The metformin is all the rage, but if you walk 10 minutes after a meal, you'll end up with all day better blood sugar management than taking 1,000 milligrams of metformin a day. And I've often said, we could end diabetes if we could just get people to move after a meal and end type 2 diabetes. So the reason I'm saying this is that the inclusion of resistance training is a complete paradigm shift when we look at nutrition. It just makes the body do different things with food. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, definitely. And there's a lot of research from our group and then other experts in protein metabolism. Like you said, resistance exercise, I like to say it primes the system. It makes your body more efficient and more sensitive to whichever meal you consume afterwards. So, less protein results in, the desirable anabolic response.
So one of the things that we learned from Don Lehman's lab is meal frequency plays a role, right? There's this protein spike, this pulse, he called it. and then it wanes, and then it pulses. So theoretically, if you ate and grazed protein all day long and the amino acid pools went up and they stayed up all day and then dropped at night, you would not see the same protein synthetic response in muscle as if you took that same amount of food and fed it to someone every 2.5 to 3 hours, so that that pool would rise and it would drop and rise and it would drop. Did these individuals follow any time of meal frequency recommendation?
Yes. So we did counsel them on meal frequency. So, not just total protein that you consume throughout the day, but the amount of protein within each meal. So I guess stereotypical American diet is like a breakfast devoid of protein, whereas your dinner is like astronomical amount. Exactly. Right. So we counseled them to kind of spread it more evenly between meals, all of their kind of daily protein goal. We actually do have a study right now where we're assessing that exact question as our primary endpoint. So we're looking at distribution, we're looking at total protein, as well as protein source. So animal-based, high-quality protein versus
and we know that the requisite amount of leucine to actually stimulate mTOR and the protein synthetic response is around 3 grams in a given meal. So most high-quality protein, anywhere from 30 to 40 grams of protein, you'll get that requisite 3 grams. Were these subjects advised to try to hit like 30 grams of protein when spreading out their meals? I want you to have 30 or 40 grams of protein per sitting.
Yeah. So basically, the way we looked at meal doses of protein, we had their daily goals, so that 0.8 to 1.0 grams per kilo. Versus the 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kilo, and then have that divided by like 3 or 4 meals throughout the day. So, so for the high group, that can look like 25 to 30. For the low group, that can look like 15 to 20.
Were any of the subjects pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic at the onset of the research?
No, so that was actually another exclusion criteria. So they had to be metabolically healthy in terms of no current chronic disease. So no diabetes, no cardiovascular disease, which is another important part of the findings that contextualize the findings of our study. So there's a lot of research that shows resistance training does increase insulin sensitivity, but those studies are in diabetic patients, whereas our population was non-diabetic individuals.
I've got lots more questions. We're going to get deeper into this. We're going to talk about the difference between the two groups. I also want to split it up by gender. I want to know how women fared versus men. We're talking with Colleen Mckenna. She's with the University of Illinois. This is a fascinating study. What it may mean to those of you who are new into the gym and middle-aged like me. I'm 63 now. I guess I'm not middle-aged anymore, am I? I guess middle-aged is what, 40 nowadays? Is that where 30, 40? What is
like 40 to 65, I think is, national.
So we will find out. Maybe you're spending too much money on your protein and we can save you some money. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Superhuman Radio. Redcon One's new BAR bar is the ultimate soft-baked protein-packed snack bar, powered by peanut butter. Perfect for while on the go to help curb hunger or sneaky sweet tooth cravings. With 20 grams of protein, use as a meal replacement bar or when you're in need of a high-protein snack. Eat a Redcon One bar as a midday snack or for fuel before an intense training session. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Redcon1 and use the code SHR25 and save 25% off these delicious bars today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
I keep saying the number one killer is insulin resistance. Managing blood sugar is the key to living long and aging well. But we all like to eat starchy carbohydrates and sugars from time to time. How do I manage this? I use a product called Blood Sugar Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This easy-to-take supplement is the result of numerous tests to find the absolute best formula for maintaining healthy blood sugar. Blood Sugar Breakthrough works to safely lower blood sugar after meals so that you can maintain a healthy weight and redirect carbohydrates to your muscles where they can be burned as energy. This means you'll avoid the worst effects of high blood sugar, like weight gain and advanced aging, while enjoying more stable energy, mental clarity, and fewer cravings. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blood sugar and save 10% with code SHR10 today. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that. Do this. Avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Superset. I need to share with you all a revolutionary new wearable technology called HapB. HapB allows you to enjoy the effects of caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, melatonin, and muscle relaxants without actually ingesting anything. Yes, really. They figured out the unique magnetic signature of each of these molecules and recorded them. Just put the HapB on, choose the signal you want, and it starts projecting the magnetic signature of that molecule that you choose, like coffee for feeling alert. Go to hapb.com/SHR. That's HAPBEE.com/SHR to learn more and unlock an $80 discount exclusively for the Superhuman Radio listeners. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. Superhuman Radio is the longest running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, going into our 16th year of continuous production. If you have a product that you think would appeal to the Superhuman Nation, we can get you on the air quickly and inexpensively to help promote your brand. Join the ranks of some of the largest and most successful companies in the world who know how great it is to be affiliated with Superhuman Radio. Contact Dan Kapitsky today. That's DAN.KOPITZKE at superhumanradio.net to learn more.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. We're getting questions. We will answer every question, I promise you. Why did I just sound like Bernie Sanders just now? I'm sorry. He came from Brooklyn. It must be that. But anyway, I have to make a mention about something I said yesterday that was incorrect. In radio, we call this a remake. Yesterday, I told you about NutriSense. They're the continuous glucose monitor that I wear. And I wear it not because I'm diabetic, but because I want to understand what food does in my body, what foods raise blood sugar, which foods don't, and also what my blood sugar looks like at night when I'm sleeping. Some of the earliest signs of type 2 diabetes are waking blood sugar. That starts at night. When you wake up in the morning, your blood sugar is high. All that started at night. So knowing what your blood sugar looks like during your sleep is really very valuable. So yesterday I said that it was 30% off plus a free month access to a registered dietitian. I was wrong. It was $30 off. So the correction is go to shrnetwork.biz/NutriSense, NutriSense. Use the code SHR30, get $30 off plus a free month access to a registered dietitian to help you interpret your NutriSense data and get you on the right track to live a long life. Don't forget, cellular senescence starts by through glucose signaling. When you have lots of bouts of high glucose, you're developing more cellular senescent cells, and that's not a good thing. Colleen has a cat. How do I know that? Because the cat's sitting on the back of her chair. What a pretty cat. Hi, kitty.
Yeah, she's usually very timid, but of course right now she just wants to say hi.
So did you see any differences in gender and how they responded? Do women have a lower threshold of protein requirement to see a protein synthetic response?
Yeah, so our protein goals were relative to body weight. So it was, I guess, hashed out in that regard. But in terms of gender-specific protein goals, no, we didn't. The literature kind of doesn't defend that.
Okay. So now let's talk about the two groups, if you want to call them normal protein group and the higher protein group.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a difference did you see, or how little of a difference did you see in the protein synthetic response of one meal plan versus the other? Now that we know how the meals were all portion controlled and dietary protein was eaten first and all that, what did you see?
Yeah, so in terms of, like you said, the protein synthetic response, so there's no difference between groups. And, this is not really, this is not surprising based on current literature. So when we're talking about science, reproducibility is a big aspect of credible, reliable science.
And the rigors of science, yes.
Exactly. So, so we didn't see any effect of that adaptive protein response in terms of that contractile proteins, that myofibrillar, oxidative protein, as well as the collagen protein within the muscle.
And I have a theory on why this is. And again, everything that I think about, I always hold it up against the backdrop of evolution and say, why would this be? How would this convey some sort of benefit, and why is it a deficit? And so I would suggest that muscle is very metabolically expensive, and the body doesn't have any way to suppress blood sugar, because we evolved not having access to so much starch and over millions of years that we've never needed a limiter. It's never gotten that high. Now, this is relatively new, the disease of modernity. At the same time, we have a limiter of muscle acquisition. Dr. Se-Jin Lee at MIT discovered it. It's called myostatin. And myostatin is there because, from an evolutionary perspective, having muscle growth out of control is going to destine you for starvation. You wouldn't be able to kill the mammoths and animals and eat all the protein day in and day out to satisfy the muscle. So the body downregulates muscle acquisition to protect you. And my theory is the reason that training naive individuals don't build more muscle when overfeeding protein, because the body goes, let's wait. Let's see if this is going to be a regular occurrence where we now have to upregulate and supercompensate, because we really don't want to upregulate and supercompensate, because we know that now, once we're in that boat, we got to keep feeding that muscle. That's my theory. What do you think?
I think in terms of that adaptive response. So those acute studies that we were talking about earlier, they do show that there is a threshold. After about 30 grams of protein, it's not being utilized for more muscle. And like you said, it is a clinical condition. If we have myostatin deficiency, just building muscle unregulated is not healthy. But I guess, to highlight kind of one of my favorite parts of our research is that we never explicitly prevented protein consumption in those key anabolic windows. So every group was provided at least a moderate amount of protein to facilitate that post-exercise recovery and facilitate that nightly anabolic window. So we don't see that differential response because protein was always provided at recovery. And based on our data, it seems like more protein during those anabolic windows, it isn't any benefit. So like you said,
it's like pouring too much gasoline into a cylinder just fouls out the spark plug and stops the engine from running. Mm-hmm. Like you got to give it what it needs, and not much more and not much less. But I do want to go back and say something, because anytime someone comes on this show over the past close to 16 years now and cited the effective threshold for protein consumption, where additional protein does not elicit greater protein synthetic response, which is 30 grams. And the lay people interpret that as eating more than 30 grams of protein at a sitting is a bad idea. In fact, there are people who say you can't digest it, which is a lie. Excuse me. People can eat a lot of protein in one sitting. They will digest it all. All you're talking about is the threshold to stimulate protein synthesis.
Exactly.
It doesn't get any better. But your body needs amino acids for everything. So people shouldn't go, oh, I'm only going to eat 30 grams of protein per meal, because you're going to have to find additional. If you're not in a slight caloric excess, you're not going to make muscle. Excuse me, I have to drink some water. Allergies. You're not going to make more muscle. And if people started using carbs to make those calories, they're going to end up with more body fat. So eat your protein. You don't have to stop at 30 grams, but you're just not going to see more muscle growth from more than 30 grams. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, that's a fair statement. Then you also mentioned, caloric surplus versus caloric deficit. So this study, we had a weight maintenance diet. So really trying to look at, because if you're in an energy surplus, that's going to affect metabolism independent of macronutrients. Energy deficit, that's going to affect metabolism independent. So we really wanted to look at metabolism in an energy balanced state. But yeah, another reason why individualized nutrition and training is so important, because, depending on your goal, gain versus loss, versus just, maintain a healthy lifestyle, those recommendations are going to be different depending on.
So let me make sure I understand something. So these individuals ate in a calorie range that was not designed to be higher or lower. It was right at their metabolic requirement to maintain. Is that what you just said?
Correct.
Well, wouldn't that kind of throw some water on the anabolic machinery, and you wouldn't see the same? I mean, overfeeding in general makes muscle. Wouldn't you want those individuals all to be in a slight caloric excess to see what the real response to the protein is?
Well, I mean, they're performing exercise, so they're gonna have that anabolic stimulus, and then we're providing that protein in that recovery period. So we in the outcomes of the study, we do see an increase in lean mass, even though the diet was prescribed to be weight maintenance.
Okay. Did you use any protein supplements? Did they have the option of drinking a whey protein shake after working out and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so we provided protein right after exercise. That was in the form of a beef patty. So, highlighting the, protein quality aspect of our question. And then nightly before sleep, we always provided a beef isolate. So that was a powder, but that just helps with kind of, the feasibility aspect. Asking someone to eat like a beef patty for breakfast for 10 weeks
so before bed. So before bed, they had
before bed, yeah.
Isolate. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's going to digest very slowly too. So it's going to carry them 4 or 5 hours into their sleep.
Yeah, that was the premise. But
did anyone comment that they slept better when they were using the beef protein isolate before bed?
Not that I can remember. That would be a very interesting question. Yeah, to look at nightly protein ingestion, how that impacts sleep quality. Yeah, I'd love to see those results.
Now, so you used tagged water, right? Deuterated. So explain to the we've done shows just about deuterium, hydrogen heavy water. Explain what the deuterated water was used for and how you followed this metabolomically throughout the body.
Yeah. So kind of thinking back to, your basic chemistry course. So deuterated water, so hydrogen has 1 neutron, but then deuterated water is 2 neutrons per that hydrogen. So it's not like radioactive. It's analytically distinct. So our I guess research equipment allows us to track that deuterium, that hydrogen with 2 neutrons, how that is tracked throughout the body. So providing that deuterated water allows us, like I said, to see that. So we looked at the protein accretion of the amino acid alanine. So alanine is a non-essential amino acid, so it's made in the body. So that deuterium is incorporated to new alanines produced during this time, and then those alanines are used to create muscle proteins during this time. So we're able to look at.
So you can actually see this incorporated into muscle tissue then.
Exactly.
What about sarcoplasmic fluid? Did that pick up any of the deuterium as well?
Yeah, so everything will pick it up. So we, the beauty of deuterium, it's allows for global incorporation. So we could look at deuterium enrichment in any other compartment if we assessed it. But obviously, our focus was muscle. And
there's deuterium in all water. It's parts per billion, but there's deuterium molecules in all water that we drink. And if you drink soda and it's made with tap water, there's deuterium in it. There's deuterium in stream water. What you're basically doing is hyper concentrating it so that you can follow it. That's all. So you have a known amount going in and a known amount coming out, and the rest of it is in tissue inside the body.
Exactly. Yeah. So, isotopes have their different abundance. For hydrogen, the one neutron hydrogen is insanely more abundant than the deuterium. And so exactly like you said, when we provide that deuterium, even though it exists naturally, it's a very, very concentrated amount. So we're able to track protein building.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we have lots of questions from the audience. Stay tuned. You are listening to and watching Superhuman Radio. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. Superhuman Radio is the longest running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, going into our 16th year of continuous production. If you have a product that you think would appeal to the Superhuman Nation, we can get you on the air quickly and inexpensively to help promote your brand. Join the ranks of some of the largest and most successful companies in the world who know how great it is to be affiliated with Superhuman Radio. Contact Dan Kapitsky today at dan.kopitzke at superhumanradio.net to learn more. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. Superset. Is there something interfering with your happiness or ability to achieve your goals? BetterHelp can help. They will assess your needs and match you with a licensed therapist. This is not a self-help or crisis line. It's professional counseling done securely online. They have a broad range of experts and are available worldwide without having to wait in an uncomfortable waiting room. Get the help you need and start living a happier life today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/betterhelp. That's better, HELP, and receive 10% off your first month of counseling when you use the code SHR. Remember those rectangular toasted pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800 889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHKCU, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expressions of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restore Cell's Stem Cell Awakening Serum, along with their other products, contain potent formulations of blue copper peptide and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Buy their complete set and receive a free exfoliating cleanser. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. Remodel your skin today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. Oh, my voice preceded my big head. I'm very smart, you know, Colleen. You know why I'm smart? Because I have this big head and I have a big brain in it. Kids used to make fun of me when I was a kid because my head was so big. Haha, who's laughing now? Anyway, so we got lots of good questions. We also have Gil Blander in the green room. He'll be joining us very shortly to talk about living life shooting in the dark as it relates to supplements and dietary regimens and stuff like that. We're going to talk about quite a bit of good stuff at the top of the hour. So here's the questions. We'll start at the top one. Dean Paulson says, let's see here. Does the ability to utilize protein downgrade with age? I have read as much as 10% per 10 years after. What do you think?
Yeah, Dean's right. So, you know, our body becomes less efficient at using protein, and more protein is needed to stimulate our muscle, which is another reason why, you know, we're interested in the study in middle age. Can we improve our metabolism before we're already in that advanced age stage? So, you know, we're just, you know, setting ourselves off better in the future. Yes,
yeah, I've heard this before. I'm 63 years old. I am acquiring new muscle as we speak. I am hormonally optimized. I'm on testosterone therapy. You know, that's true. I often wonder how much of the lack of muscle building in older adults comes from not eating enough protein in the first place. Granted, maybe they do have a harder time metabolizing protein, but I find a lot of older people gravitate towards just garbage carbs all the time. So that's another thing that's another study that needs to be done. Jeff Robson says, did the study control for animal protein versus plant protein?
No, so we emphasize animal-based protein. We provided animal-based protein in those anabolic windows, post-exercise, nightly before sleep, but participants weren't explicitly told to not have plant-based sources. And a lot of, this was a whole food diet. So a lot of, other foods are going to inadvertently be plant foods that have protein in them. A different study design would be needed to better answer that question.
But Don Lehman has done these studies. So I'm going to go back. You know what's funny about research? We only care about what's coming out now. We forget about what's already been done and the value of that foundation moving forward. It's really funny, but it's a human condition. So Don Lehman and actually Don Lehman, his lab did this study, and Lane Norton was one of the authors of the study. I can't remember if this was before his Ph.D. or after. They looked at soy protein, dairy protein, egg protein, and one other, and I just can't remember what it is. And they looked for the protein synthetic response per 30 grams, per 3 grams of leucine. Now, keep in mind, of all the plant protein, soy has the highest leucine and more like dairy protein. So would stand to reason that soy should produce the same protein synthetic response per gram as whey protein. I think it was casein. That was the other one. They isolated whey and casein. Well, what they found out was soy had a horrible, horrible protein synthetic response gram for gram compared to both dairies And even, and casein is low leucine, but it underperformed casein, whey, and egg. Well, what they discovered later on is that many plant proteins contain something called a trypsin inhibitor. This would have been an evolutionary gift to plants to make them less desirable to be eaten by animals. Combine that with the phytoestrogens in soy. I think soy is not a good thing to eat, but that's for other people to argue. The trypsin inhibition is the enzyme that's required to break down protein. And this is why people who eat high soy protein diets are gassy all the time, because the protein digests down later into the colon and you get all gassy from it. It ferments instead of digests. So I would suggest, Jeff, that all plant proteins are inferior to all animal proteins. And why even do a control? What are we trying to prove? That we already know that they don't perform as well. So that would be my thing. WS says, if this is considered high protein, 75 to 90 grams, what do they consider average? I think the RDA is 60, right?
Well, yeah, so the RDA is relative to body weight. So that's another reason why, it's so important to have these individualized recommendations, because, 75 to 90 grams for a 70 kilo individual might be high, but for a, 110 kilo individual, that's not sufficient. So, kind of breaking it down in just absolute amounts with no context of training status, age, or body weight just doesn't really help.
He also says, what are the differences in recommendations for men and women? I don't think there is any, right? It goes by weight. It's all by weight, your protein.
Correct. Yeah. And research kind of, overwhelmingly suggests that in terms of muscle metabolism, there's little differences between men and women.
Finn Mackey says, and this may be when we were talking about how the body doesn't like to put on muscle too fast. The body requires constant long-term changes to break homeostasis and create a new set point. Peter Lakatos, my friend in Hungary, posted a link, but unfortunately, Peter, we can't click it and read it. So if you can also post the title of the study, maybe that would be great. It would appear that this study is too short in duration. Well, as Colleen pointed out earlier, this is just one segment of a much longer study, right?
Correct.
And we were looking for acute changes, not long-term changes in this study. And this study showed that the difference between protein consumption really, from an acute standpoint, really wasn't any better one than the other. So that means that newbies don't need as much protein until their body is ready to use it. That should be the takeaway from this. Would you agree?
Yeah. So, initiating that response, starting a training program, you don't need more protein. And then inadvertently, when you train more, you gain lean mass, then your body weight is going to increase. And then you will be consuming higher absolute amount of protein.
And then Dean Paulson says, off the subject, but the Mediterranean diet is a balanced all-around plan for health. Yeah, I think we all agree that the Mediterranean diet is a great place for most people to eat. Now, there are some people like me who seem to respond poorly to nightshades. Go figure. I'm Italian. Okay, I'm 14% Northern African, right? Maybe that's why. But eggplant doesn't work for me. I can tell you, I have aches and pains the day after I eat eggplant. And those are nightshades. And we have to remember from the days of Romeo and Juliet, nightshades were poisoned. So the nightshades are a class of plants that have bad actors in them, but the dose is where the poison is. And so those of us who seem to react to nightshades, the Mediterranean diet calls for lots of consumption of them. I don't do them. I just don't do them. And now that I look back at my grandparents, my grandmother made eggplant parmesan once in a while, very rarely. So maybe they learned that. Robert Thompson wants to know Don Lehman's recommendation for BCAAs. Again, I don't think Don has a recommendation for BCAAs. I've never seen a study where he talked about them. They always, all their studies they did were on intact proteins. But I think BCAAs are a waste of money. EAAs, if you're going to take amino acid blends, BCAAs is like waking all the workers up and having them come to the job site, but there's no bricks and mortar. They can't build any walls. They go home. They did nothing. EAAs stimulate protein synthesis and give you the ingredients to actually build muscle fiber. You have any ideas on that, Colleen?
Yeah, I mean, exactly like you're saying. So protein synthesis, it's an all or nothing response. And so BCAAs, it's just 3 amino acids out of 20. So if you don't have the others in your system, it's
a waste of time.
Save your money.
All right, look, this has been fascinating, and I know you're probably going to be working on a new study, this longer one. So will you come back on the show when you have the results of that one?
Yeah, of course. We'd love to be back on.
What would you like both lay people and clinicians to take away from your research paper?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I like most about our research is the coordinated aspects. So really highlights, this was a coordinated effort of exercise physiologists, dietitians. We also had clinicians on staff. So it just goes to show, individualized, integrated care is really important. Dietitian knows how to ask those specific questions about diet quality, protein quality. Exercise physiologist knows how to gear those, training prescriptions, stuff like that. So it's not just what we do, if you're exercising or if you're eating protein, it's how you do it. When are you eating protein? What protein sources? What type of exercise? A coordinated care.
I close the microphone because I clear my throat a lot. You know what I would love to see someone do? I would love to see someone do a study where 20 minutes before feeding a protein dominant meal, like what you worked with this, have people do a couple sets of body weight squats, a couple sets of push-ups, and a couple sets of pull-ups, and then eat that meal. Have a control group eat the same meal, but not do that. And do that for 12 weeks and see what happens. Because I have a prediction. I think you'll be turning on the protein synthetic response in full form several times a day. And I believe that muscle acquisition would be a lot easier. That's just a guess of mine. Yeah,
I mean, muscle contraction, independent of insulin, uptakes nutrients. And like we talked about before, primes the system, makes you more efficient for amino acid uptake and utilization. So yeah, I'm all for a couple push-ups before your meal.
There you go. Colleen, come back, okay? I want you back on the show, please, okay?
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was really nice talking with you.
Yeah, it was cool. Take care. All right, we're going to take one quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be I hit the wrong button. Now you see him already. We're going to have Gil Bland on the show, and we're going to talk about blood work. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Redcon One's new BAR bar is the ultimate soft-baked protein-packed snack bar, powered by peanut butter. Perfect for while on the go to help curb hunger or sneaky sweet tooth cravings. With 20 grams of protein, use as a meal replacement bar or when you're in need of a high-protein snack. Eat a Redcon One bar as a midday snack or for fuel before an intense training session. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Redcon1 and use the code SHR25 and save 25% off these delicious bars today. Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/Delta8. That's DELTA and the number 8, and use the code SHR20 to get 20% off your first order today. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHKCU, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expressions of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restora Cell's Stem Cell Awakening Serum, along with their other products, contain potent formulations of blue copper peptide and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Buy their complete set and receive a free exfoliating cleanser. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. Remodel your skin today. Superset.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're joined by Gil Blander. How you doing, Gil?
Very well. How are you, Carl?
Wonderful, wonderful. Before we talk about testing in general, I was supposed to have blood work submitted to your company by now because we did the first blood work and I had some real surprising things that I saw.
Okay.
Most notably, my iron was very high. But this is nothing new with me. I'm on testosterone therapy and I tend to accumulate iron very, very quickly. I had to wait for my doctor to send another prescription for therapeutic phlebotomy. I want to wait until I have at least one session, which will be this Friday, before I have more blood drawn for Inside Tracker so we can look at the changes that I've made. I've made a lot of changes, but the only one that I haven't done yet, is the phlebotomy. And my goal is to get my ferritin levels down and my total iron binding capacity into a better range, because I'm a strong believer that iron accumulation leads to premature death, organ failures, dementia, a host of problems. And we've talked about these over the years on the show. For 10 years, I've talked about iron. But, you know, my father used to have a barber, and his hair was always a mess. And my father would say, I really need to stop going to him because he doesn't care about his own hair. He's not going to care about mine. So I'm somebody who tells other people what to do, but then I don't do it myself. So before I get my blood drawn again, and we discuss it on the show, I want to just get this therapeutic phlebotomy in my rearview mirror. But there's something more important to talk about than selfishly talking about my blood work. And before we delve into that, I want to ask you, why did Inside Tracker start? Why did this business come about? Tell the story behind the company.
Sure. So I'm the founder and chief scientific officer of the company. I'm a Ph.D. in training. As you can hear from my accent, born and raised in Israel, and moved to Boston to do a postdoctoral fellowship at MIT. I was always and still fascinated by the aging process, and I wanted to find a way, how can we stop the clock? How can we improve the quality of life? How can we increase the longevity? And that's why I joined one of the best labs that studied aging in the world, the lab of Lenny Guarente, and I done my postdoctoral fellowship there. And during that time, I was exposed to the biopharmaceutical high-tech environment of Kendall Square, which is the area around MIT. And I realized that I can help humanity more by starting my own company than being a professor in the academia. So I moved to the industry, and then came with the idea that in order for you to live longer, better life, you need to understand what's happening inside your body. And then based on that, you can start intervene and basically take care of the machine, that the most important machine that you have, which is your body. And I really like the analogy of the car. We take the car every 5,000 miles to the technician plug a computer into the car, the computer telling the technician what to do, and then you run the car another 5,000 miles and then do it again and again and again. And research showed that by doing that, we increase the lifespan of the car by from 100,000 miles to around 200,000 miles. So I said, let's do something similar to us humans. Today, you cannot plug a computer into your brain and find exactly what are the issues that you have. So we decided, let's plug a needle into your vein, extract a liquid gold that's called blood, and based on that, let's try to understand what's happening inside your body. Then when we know what are the issues that you have, and a lot of them are small, let's give you a plan, an intervention plan, what to do in order to optimize your body. And then you will follow the interventions. Few months later, we'll test again and again, and very similar to the car, hopefully we can increase the lifespan of human from, let's say, 80 to something higher, but also improve the quality of life. So that's basically...
Health span is as important as lifespan. No one wants to live a long time, 30 years in a nursing home.
Nobody, yeah. I agree.
And so, and quite frankly, we had a fascinating show on the other day. I'm going to email you the link. We had an evolutionary scientist on who claims that if we can reduce the accumulation of senescent cells from 18 years old on, he said the human body can actually last 700 years. Now, I have no idea where he came from this, but he's very well respected. And I'm going to send this to you because senescent cells are almost exclusively driven by blood sugar. We have people today who are living with high blood sugar day in and day out, and they age very, very quickly. But with that being said, I love the analogy of the car too. When I wrote about today's show, I said, so many of us are doing this diet. We're taking this supplement. Like me, I take rapamycin twice a month, 6 milligrams, one day, every other week. But I don't really know if it's working, right? I don't know.
No, you don't.
And you would no more pull up to the gas pump and stick the gas hose in your car and squeeze it and try to put $10 in your car when your car doesn't need gas. You wouldn't do that. But we have a gas gauge. That's why you look at your gas gauge. You consult your gas gauge. But we don't have a gauge on our head where we can go, oh, look what's going on. So this is why we have to test. But my confusion is there are early adopters like me. I love blood tests. I love them. In fact, they know my name at any lab test now, because sometimes I'll just walk in and say, I wonder what my ferritin levels are. I wonder what my testosterone levels are. But most people don't want to test. Most people rather waste money taking things that they don't need. And quite frankly, some of those things could actually be hurting them.
Yeah.
What do you think it is? What is it? Is it a human condition to be afraid to look and see?
Yeah, I think that it's the cost versus the value. So the cost of doing the blood test is not only going to the lab. It's also so it's not only the cost of the lab test, but it's also going to the lab and the pain of having the needle into your vein. All of that, it's a cost. So I think that if you will give them enough value, and I really believe that we are giving them enough value at Instant Tracker, because we are first showing you what is not optimized, and then we are giving you some insight, and then giving you some specific recommendation. And by the way, some of the recommendation, as you said, can save you a lot of money. Because a lot of time we can tell you, hey, stop taking this multivitamin or stop taking this specific supplement. That's cost a lot of money. But also it will allow you to optimize your life, and you will feel much better, as you said, and hopefully improve your health span. So I think that it's the issue today that the majority of the population are looking at blood tests as something that is a physician. It's basically when I sick, I will do a blood test.
Right.
They are not seeing it also as basically a preventative measure. Let's make the blood test. You discuss about glucose, and I completely agree with you. High glucose is one of the worst enemy for longevity. You can find it early that you are starting to creep up, and then you have so many different interventions, supplement, lifestyle, exercise, nutrition, that you can make your blood glucose better, and then you won't be diabetic. And then if you look at diabetic, they are the lifespan of diabetic is at least 10 years on average lower than someone that is not diabetic.
Right.
Think about the 10 years that you lose just by not taking care of your body. And in the all the diseases that are lifestyle dependent, very high percentage of the cause of that is lifestyle. Yeah, the genetic also play a role, but a lot of it is lifestyle. So if you change your lifestyle, you will sleep good enough, you will eat the right food, you will exercise, you won't accumulate too much body fat, you have much better chance not to become diabetic. So in my opinion, it's no-brainer. But again, it's the perceived cost and the perceived value. I think that the perceived cost is too high and the perceived value is too low. And that's what we are trying to change.
But that's in their eyes. That's in their mind. It's not true. Because if look, I was using 500 milligrams of testosterone a week.
Yeah.
And there's a phenomenon in older, I'm 63. When men get older, and this is probably an evolutionary gift, our receptors in the liver that flush testosterone out, they start to go away. We have fewer and fewer. And it makes sense because as testosterone levels drop, the testes produce less testosterone. The liver says, oh, we're going to conserve because the objective is to keep the levels in a physiological place. So, and there was a study that proves what I'm saying. If a young man and an old man takes the same dose of testosterone, the old man will see a much higher total and free testosterone as a result, milligram for milligram. So I was taking 500 milligrams a week and my testosterone was 4,700 nanograms, way too high. So I've gone down to 250, which is where I should be anyway. And I'm waiting long enough to get my next blood test because it takes a good month and a half for all of those little depots in my glutes and in my quads and in my shoulders to finish delivering till I have a new normal level, for instance. But I would have kept taking that 500 milligrams had I not had my blood work done by you guys. I was like, oh my God, that's too high. I mean, I want to be 1,200, 1,300, somewhere around there, but I don't want to be 4,700. And so people have to understand that this is idiocy, that we do things because someone says so without knowing if our body, everybody likes to talk about individualized medicine, but nobody wants to do it.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying, because each of us respond differently to a supplement, to a food, to an exercise. And it's not one treatment fit all. We need to do the intervention and then test it and see whether it works. Maybe it's overshoot. You can take vitamin D supplementation and might take too much, and it will be too much. And the same with vitamin B12. And as you said, the same with iron. You need to be very careful not to get too much because too much is not too good. There is a range of level for each biomarker that is the optimal range.
Right.
And if you don't know, how can you know that you have a problem? So that's why it's so important to test and to find whether you have an issue with some biomarker, have the intervention, then test again to see that this marker got to the right level, but also that not new biomarker went out.
Right. Because that's the other thing. When you change something, other things change. So you have to see the whole picture all over again. Exactly. It's not adequate just to test one thing. Rigo Vargas asks the question about privacy. He sent me an email about today's show.
Okay.
He's very reluctant to do genetic testing because he's worried about, I already did it. I did 23andMe. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not that important for people to worry, for me to worry. But he's worried because of his line of work and so on. And so what can you tell my audience that if they use Inside Tracker to do their genetic testing, what happens to the privacy of their data?
Yeah. So just as an introduction, we're doing blood testing, genetic testing, and we're also integrated with those activity trackers. So you can have all of that together, and you go basically from a low resolution to high resolution to 4K resolution. So more data make us more. We know more about your body, and then we can give you a better recommendation. Now, talking about privacy. So we are taking privacy very seriously, and we have a team in the company that basically security team that checking and improving
Gil, you dropped out. You said they're checking and.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You dropped out just for a second.
Okay, so our security team looking at our security level and improving it and making sure that everything is working well. We are also HIPAA compliance. So we are doing everything that we can to make sure that the data is secure. Also, we really like to use the data of our user for basically improving the product. But if the user decide not to share it with us, he just need to click one click and say, hey, I don't want to share it with Inside Tracker, and nobody will look at his data, even not for science. So I think that we are doing the best that we can do. It's very similar to what other companies are doing. And now it's based on your appetite. There is a cost and value again. The cost is that you might be exposed your data to other. The value is that will give you a lot of value that we can, for example, it's not only that your glucose is high, but also you have a high predisposition to high glucose, okay? Or whether you might be sensitive to gluten or to nuts. So there is a lot of information that is interesting about genetics. If you are too scared, don't do that. That's the recommendation that I will give him. Right.
And that's how a lot of these genetic testing companies are now. If you're willing to allow them to see your data, they create new data points. Oh, we learned that people with this allele have this problem. But again, if it's not required. But I guess you don't share your data with anyone outside of the company, right?
No, it's only in the company for improving the product and trying to publish data, because we want to also help the humanity to understand. All is anonymized, by the way. So I don't know that it's your DNA.
What does that mean? What does that mean to the audience? It's all anonymized. Explain that.
Anonymized means that we don't know that it's Carl. We have a user number XYZ, and we are looking at that like that. So we don't know your name and your location, nothing that can identify you. And that's how we are doing the science. And the science is important. And I'm not saying only for Inside Tracker, 23andMe and other companies, they can push the science forward. So I really recommend people to allow those companies to use the data, because then we can help you to understand yourself better, but also in the future maybe help to develop new drugs and understand the processes, biological processes. So it's very important, in my opinion, to share it for scientific research. But if you don't have appetite to that, don't do that. That's okay.
So are you adding anything new to the blood work? Your blood work is fantastic. You test for things that most general practitioners and physicians don't even think of. I know that you do ferritin. Do you also do total iron binding capacity? Do you do TIBC?
Yeah, you are doing TIBC. Yeah, we have like 10 different markers for iron, including hemoglobin and hematocrit and red blood cells and hemoglobin, of course. So we have like 10 markers for the iron. And as you mentioned, Carl, specifically for you, iron is so important. In your case, it's high, which is less common. A lot of our users see actually low iron. It's especially in the athletic active population. People that exercise a lot, especially runners, tend to bleed from the gut and lose some iron when they are exercising. Also, if you look at women, especially premenopausal women, they lose blood every month. And we can see in our database, and actually it's publicly available, it's data that published in a lot of papers, that let's say at least 20% of the women, especially athletic active women, they have too low iron, and that can compromise their athletic performance, but also their general performance, because you don't have enough oxygen that coming to your muscle and brain. So it's not a simple thing, and unfortunately, most of the physicians are not looking, even for young women, they're not looking at the level of ferritin, and ferritin is the first, let's say, signal that you have an issue there. And I don't know why. Maybe it's too expensive. Maybe it's but they are not testing for ferritin.
So ferritin also tends to be ferritin correlates very highly with pro-inflammatory markers,
Correct.
Which is very interesting now. We learned that through the COVID research, that people who had the highest inflammation had the highest ferritin levels, even if they didn't eat much red meat at all. But the thing about ferritin that is, to me, I mean, I get my ferritin tested anyway, but to me, ferritin is a lackluster supplier of information. The reason I say that, if you look at ferritin, in the absence of iron consumption, hemi-iron in red meat, because plant iron is virtually unable to be digested properly and absorbed, unless you take vitamin C with it, by the way. But if you take vitamin C by itself, with nothing else, ferritin goes up. So I started to read about ferritin, and I read that ferritin is a chaperone protein. It chaperones iron, and one molecule of ferritin can hold between 1 and 60,000 molecules of iron. So knowing ferritin doesn't really tell us a lot about iron unless we do TIBC with it, and we see what the binding capacity is. And then you can say, oh my goodness, my iron is really getting up there. I need to change that. But ferritin seems to correlate more with inflammation. And that, I think, is a very valuable. If you have high ferritin, but your total iron binding capacity is more than adequate, your problem may not be iron. It may be inflammation.
Correct. But when you have a low ferritin, because the body, there is a feedback loop. So if you have a very low free iron in the blood, the body will create less ferritin. So when ferritin is low, that means that indeed you have low iron. When ferritin is high, I completely agree with you. There is a lot of data in the literature that show high ferritin is actually can reflect high inflammation.
Yeah. So what is your thinking about therapeutic phlebotomy in order to lower ferritin and iron in the body? Do you think that once you get your ferritin low enough, does iron come out of tissue and go into the blood?
Yeah, so there are at least a few papers that show that I'm calling it a donation blood in a way. Okay. When you one way to decrease the level of high ferritin together with high hemoglobin is actually blood donation. So there is a data that show that. Again, I think that it's a pretty rare situation. I would say less than 1% of the population get to that. It's not something that is very high, but definitely it's happened, and that's one of the interventions that you can do in order to decrease it.
My question, I think, is, and I'm going to find someone to answer this question. So I've had fairly high iron for a while now, just because I wasn't going and donating blood like I used to. Mm-hmm. I eat a pound of red meat every day, good meat. I don't mean bologna and sausages. I mean steak, ground steak. And because I'm on testosterone, I absorb iron very readily. And so my concern is that this period of time, almost 2 years, where I wasn't donating blood, I've accumulated iron, and I believe it's in my tissue. Because, one of the signs of iron overload that people don't understand is the buildup of lactate in muscles very quickly. In fact, one study I read about iron overload showed that people who at night when they're sleeping, they're in bed and they move and they feel like their legs are burning like they just ran 5 miles.
Yeah.
And also muscle stiffness. People say, I'm getting older. My muscles feel so stiff. This can all be a result of iron accumulation in tissue. And I also messaged with a good friend of mine who's a fantastic orthopedic surgeon. I said, Betsy, have you seen iron embedded in soft tissue like ligaments? She goes, never in normal people with high iron, but often in people who have hemochromatosis.
Yeah.
So it's different. But my question is, if I give blood until, let's say, my ferritin is just above 50 and my total iron binding capacity is marvelous, a great level, and I stay there for a year, since I'm not going to be eating red meat for a while and adding iron, the iron, I would think in theory, would have to come out of tissue. When the blood needs iron, it would take it out of my tissue, like reverse osmosis almost. So will I eventually get this iron out of my tissue? That's the question I have.
Yeah, I think that it's a logical assumption, but I haven't looked at it carefully, so I cannot tell you if it's the real situation. So you said that you have hemochromatosis or not?
No, I don't. You don't.
Okay.
No, I don't have any of the genes for hemochromatosis.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so I think that it's a logical assumption, but again, I haven't looked into that carefully, so I cannot say by 100%.
I want to put this placard back up because I want my audience to understand something, that nothing you're doing right now is working for you unless you know it's working for you. And the only way to know is to test. And the single best test out there today is Inside Tracker, because they take all of your data from your activity tracking devices, your sleeping rings, your Apple Watch. Then they take your blood work, and then they take, if you have genetic data already, you can import it. If you don't, you can order it. And they triangulate all of this data and give you the single best guide for your best life. There's nothing like this. And you know, people will say, oh my God, it's so expensive. How expensive is it if it saves you from buying supplements you never needed that may actually be hurting you, or keeps you out of a specialist's doctor's office the last 15 years of your life? How much is that worth? Is it worth testing a couple times a year? I think it is. And I think that most people would agree with me. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker and use the code SHR25, I believe it is, unless maybe you just get there with that link, you'll save 25% off. That's a big chunk. That's a quarter of the cost taken right off. This is the single best way to test your blood. Just getting lab work done. I know that the Horvath, a lot of people like this Horvath thing. You know, Dr. Horvath, he created this from existing data. And I'm not saying that it's not good, but you know, when I go to the rifle range with a new scope, I use a bore sighter that gets me on the paper, but I can't hunt with that. Just being on the paper isn't good enough. But once I'm on the paper, then I can tweak it until it's in the bullseye. This blood test is the bullseye. All those other tests out there, they'll get you on the paper, but you can't make any real recommendations from it. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that if we're talking about the Horvath clock, the Horvath clock is great because it's usually will tell you whether you are a bit older or a bit younger than your chronological age.
Right.
But the problem with that right now, and actually I'm trying to work together with Steve Horvath to build what I call lifestyle-dependent Horvath clock, is that you will change your nutrition or exercise supplementation, and then you can change your Horvath clock. Today, it's not responsive. What we developed at Inside Tracker is something we call inner age. And that's basically, we can calculate your age based on the blood biomarkers and see whether your blood biomarkers, based on your age, are younger or older than someone in your age and gender. So based on that, we can come and tell you, hey, Carl, you're older or younger than your age, but also then giving you a recommendation. You should eat more of that or less of that, take this supplement, do this exercise, change your lifestyle a bit. And we have seen that our users can improve the blood biomarkers and by that improve inner age. We published a paper in 2018 about the platform. We looked at a cohort of 1,000 users and followed them for 7 months on average. And I've seen that as a cohort, they improved their values on most of the blood biomarkers. But what is interesting, that they haven't chose the same intervention. They chose, this cohort of 1,000 chose 525 different interventions. But when you combine them together, it doesn't matter if one decided to eat more oatmeal and the other ate more nuts and the other used to cook in olive oil. At the end of the day, if you combine them together and looked at the subpopulation that started with high cholesterol or high glucose or high inflammation, and you follow them for 7 months, you've seen a significant improvement in their blood biomarkers. So the personalized approach is working.
Yeah, no, I know, and everybody talks about individualized medicine until it comes time to actually do it, and this is individualized medicine. Exactly. It's about you and what you need, and not somebody else. So again, let me give this one more time here. The product is called Inside Tracker. Let me just find the banner ad here. I have such a hard time finding all these little thumbnails. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, you'll save 25% off your tests. If you have your own 23andMe or genetic data, you can upload it. You don't have to pay for it again. And they'll interpret it along with your blood work and make recommendations. You know, we had a company a couple years ago that came on the show called Chronomics. They claimed to be epigenetic testing. And my audience jumped right on it. And unequivocally, it was the worst experience anyone had. I'm being honest. They know. Okay. They know, because I was very disappointed. Almost everybody in the audience that got tested emailed me and said, all they said was, my biological age is 47 and eat more fish. Mm-hmm. Everybody, every single person who got their work done. Now, think about this. If I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, fish isn't really that great for me, because I have that APOE allele, right? Yeah. So my point is that they claim to have such great technology, and maybe they do, but when it came down to actually making and they told my audience that they would be able to make recommendations, and everybody got the same recommendation. On yours, I got a host of recommendations. I'm actually implementing each and every one of them, and that's why I'm waiting to get my blood work done, because on yours it said my biological age is 62 and I'm 63. Next time I do it, I wanted to say I'm 57.
Exactly. Yeah. You can always be younger. You can always be better. Yes. And I think that what we are doing also, that the recommendation is very personalized for you based on your age and gender and ethnicity and athletic activity. So we are trying to give you the right recommendation. We have a team of around 15 scientists that mine the literature all the time, and trying to feed the best recommendation for a specific person, again, based on the demographic information. So it's not a one solution fit all. We are giving you the right solution for you based on all the demographic information that you gave us, also what you like to eat and you don't like to eat, and definitely based on your DNA, blood, and the physiological marker.
Inside Tracker is individualized medicine that you have complete control of. It's a wonderful thing. I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much, Gil.
Thank you, Carl.
You know, I almost made Aliyah. I almost made Aliyah. I almost moved to Israel. I was working for a company that was based in Tel Aviv called Visonic. They made security equipment. And I used to go frequently to Tel Aviv and Kiryat Gat, where our manufacturing plant was. Israel is the most beautiful place I've ever been. It's amazing. And
I agree.
The people are wonderful. They're full of life. You never understood how these people were so happy and so full of life because of, all the problems they had around them. But they're the most amazing people in the world, the Israelis. Most amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I will have you back on the show when I have my blood work done, and we can dissect it then, okay?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much, Carl.
All right, we'll see you again, Gil. Take care.
Bye.
All right, so that's it for today, folks. Let me see. Today is Wednesday. I'm off the air the next 2 days, actually. Got a lot going on, but we have great shows planned all next week. So please share this show, by the way. Share it with friends and family. You never know whose life you're going to change. And we'll see you Monday with more Superhuman Radio. Stay safe. Have a good holiday weekend. There you go.